Content warning, intrusive thoughts and feelings of worthlessness, gore, and sexual tones. How dare they take me? How dare they do this to me? I thought my fury was born out of noble vengeance, but it's more primal, more rage-filled now, and burns bright within me as this sword in my hand. I will cut through this ship, these mind flayers, these beautiful, mangled corpses. They soothe my hatred for but a moment, but it's enough to have the feeling of bliss once more inside me. I'd almost forgotten what inner peace feels like, but staring at their bodies and their twisted repose reminds me. Shadowheart was nearby, and once I woke her, we agreed to figure out what happened to us together. Not far away was a rakish fellow who tried to trick me into chasing a boar, only to hold a knife to my throat. I like the blackguard. Our minds connected, and we each realized the other was infected too. What a pretty trail of blood we will blaze in our quest for a cure. Inside the shipwreck, there were more of those accursed cerebral hounds. But finally, did we find the vile illithid who took me. The piteous creature tried to slither into my mind once more, but the wretch had lost its hold over me. So I put my foot down. Again, and 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 again! Until its head was smeared across the wreckage of the ship it used to command. Out of the corner of my blood-covered eyes, I saw a swirling chasm of energy. I touched it, and a hand reached out. I must confess my desire to see that hand severed from its fleshy attachment. My curiosity outweighed the bloodlust for now, and I pulled the hapless man through. Yet another infected soul in our little band. Also met up with Lae'zel again. She had been captured by tieflings who seemed more scared than vicious. They let her go, but would not tell me where they'd been camping. Selfish bastards. However, Lae'zel thinks she knows of a solution to our predicament, in the form of a Githyanki creche, and someone named Zoru knows where it is. Hearing desperate cries in the distance, we found the tiefling camp, no thanks to our previous friends, where a gorgeous slaughter was taking place. Tieflings and goblins alike were falling to the symphony of swords when a dramatic swashbuckler calling himself the Blade of Frontiers rushed into the fray. More tieflings were falling when I realized these were helpless civilians that the goblins were setting upon. This was no pitched battle, but a massacre, and it was my duty to protect those who could not protect themselves. Together, Gale and Shadowheart turned the field into a blazing inferno, and my mind turned blank as I felt the bloody dance consume me, body and soul. When I came to, I was inside the camp. The battle had been won, but two of the fighters were at each other's throats. The tiefling, Zevlor, was furious that Aradin had led goblins to their secret hideout. A warrior's duty is to protect people from this carnage, life-affirming as it may be. So I can see why it ended like it did. Especially when it turned out that the druids running the grove were forcing the tieflings out due to all the increased risk. They were going to cast a ritual under the oversight of Korga, their new first druid. Their previous first druid, Halsin, was captured by goblins in Aradin's expedition. Maybe he can help. The infighting within the grove was intense, everyone out for themselves, all except for this Blade of Frontiers. He was teaching the children to defend themselves. Another afflicted soul, but he seems less focused on curing himself than on chasing a champion of the hells. And I too have a score to settle with the whole infernal lot of them. Besides the infighting, a bugbear had snuck around the walls and into the grove. An impressive feat given their size and their smell. The person we saved seemed rather suspicious and told us that they carried a soul coin, a currency used in hell that contains a mortal soul. But she realised that we would be better custodians of it than she was, especially if it led to these assassination attempts. Further into the grove, the druids had captured a tiefling child, Arabella. Arabella had tried to steal a sacred idol, but for their sins, Korga was threatening them with a death viper. Not even all the druids were in agreement to this inhumane but delicious act. I desperately wanted to see how the child would look with death viper venom coursing through their veins, but no. The first druid eventually relented, but not before Shadowheart suddenly cried out in pain, although she did not explain why. Saving the child felt good. I felt righteousness returning to me. Outside of Korga's chambers was a pompous peacock of a chronicler pestering me for information on the goblin attack. I could barely remember an iota of it, but he insisted on conjuring a tale so ludicrous it was more suited to a children's fable than an accurate description of the bloody gavotte that I felt. He claimed that the goblins have abandoned their god in order to serve the Absolute, and is heading to the goblin camp to investigate further. This will be interesting. We did manage to find a healer amongst the druids, although her demeanour was a little odd, holding a thorned branch which she later told me was laced with fatal toxin, interrogating me to find out my intentions. She realised that she could trust me, and let me know that Halsin had been investigating why other illithid infected like me were gathering in a place called Moonrise Towers. I headed out to try and find this former first druid when I came upon an unfortunate soul in a secluded hut who had drunk a potion that left her legs unable to walk. A couple of glasses of Chilton Amberthroat leaves me like that too, I'll be honest. My vision turned to black as I felt a warmth spread over my claws, then spray into my eyes and into my throat. I came to and saw them sprawled on the ground. What happened? What had I done? They were just sitting there, and it had been easy, and it made me feel whole again. But what if others found out? What if they learned the truth of their supposed defender of tiefling refugees? And so I ran. I ran from the grove in a secret passage, hiding my shame by clearing out more goblins. We found a druid near death, but brought them back. Their thanks made me feel good. I stumbled, almost literally, upon a maimed true soul who had been gutted by an owlbear. He offered me his siblings as servants, and called me a true soul too. Fervent devotees of the Absolute. They were hunting survivors of the Nautiloid crash, and, well, they found one. They can spend as long with their brother as they care to now, but I did pocket the tadpole that came out of his head. It might be useful to study one later. Goblins had overrun a nearby village. At least dealing with them should be uncomplicated. After a few clever ambushes, we spotted Aradin right outside by the remains of a skirmish. He'd been given a contract by the Balduran mage Leroacan that he was giving up on. Leroacan was searching for an artifact called the Night Song. Apparently, this was hidden underground, and was the reason that Halsin had joined Aradin on his expedition. Pushing further into the village, I stumbled upon an ochre debating society arguing about the finer culinary merits of humanoid flesh.
Gentlemen, contain yourselves. This quarrel sours our feast. Besides, tastes like pork.
One of them even described themselves as a gourmand. How amusing. It seems they've been enlisted by the local goblin tribe to make sure that only followers of the absolute pass. However, as Lump was a student of higher commerce and extortion, we made them a counteroffer that they could not refuse, and they will now fight at my side whenever I sound this horn. Heading up the hill, the final goblins wanted to truss me to the mill, as they'd done to a hapless deep gnome they'd caught earlier. My persuasion skills have improved massively over the last few days, and they decided that they should leave. But I never said they could escape. Looking at the windmill's controls, there were two levers. One would apply the brakes, and the other would produce a wondrous shooting star. By the gods above and below, it truly was a marvel to behold. Later, on his corpse, I found out that this gnome was searching for their boyfriend, Volbrun, who had been taken. Was this more of the cult of the Absolute's doing? After painting the town red, we found the village apothecary, which used to house an alchemist of some repute and copious secrets. Unbeknownst to those around them, they were a red wizard called Ilan Toth. They concealed their private sanctum with animated skeletons and an inquisitive mirror, whilst working on ways to restore life, kidnapping locals for their dark rituals. Their final hope had been a magical, well-guarded book, but the key, a gem, had gone missing. Toth suspected their apprentice. I can't explain how, but I feel like the book wants to be read. So we took it with us. It was getting late, so we searched around for a place to rest our heads that actually had an intact roof, as I could not bear returning to the grove, and we found a chapel that was in the process of being ransacked by looters. They soon saw the error of their ways and that the loot was rightfully ours, with the help of a little fire. The chapel hid a crypt dedicated to Jurgle, scribe of the dead, with a mysterious book that didn't yield to my divine powers, but soon opened when I cast my strongest spell. It held the names of more dead and forgotten gods. Gods that came and went like the tides long ago. Further in was a walking, talking ghoul who decided that I was the perfect person to philosophize towards. Ghouls and ogres. Why do I attract the weirdest scholars? This ghoul, Withers, pressed me for how I would weigh a life, and really, am I the one to be asking about that? The horrors I have seen, felt, tasted, they leave me treasuring life, while knowing how worthless mine is. Securing the chapel, we made camp, and one of the tieflings, a bard named Alfira, found us and offered to join. She sees good in me. Maybe there still is. I have to live up to her expectations. Lae'zel was not just an elegant warrior, but a student of Gith knowledge, and she is certain that the crest she mentioned has a mind-flaying purification device. I sure hope she's right. Will told me more of how Karlach fled from him aboard the Nautiloid as we were careening through Avernus. So says his confidant, at least. He also mentioned how he started defending people when he saved a child from goblins. If only it were that easy. I closed my eyes, but soon enough was startled awake by a cry. Standing in the middle of the chapel, I came to and found the bard eviscerated before me. The blood comforts me, but why? I'd set upon her in the night, stabbing and stabbing and stabbing until she was naught but a puddle of entrails. At least I hit the body well enough, but...
Her blood is on your hands.